The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Good morning.
Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it is Wednesday in the Riv after a election that isn't an election yet. So we haven't elected anybody. We haven't elected a president yet.
We haven't elected a president
Before
yet.
we get to this, we're going to have a lot of talk about that one. But let's go off on our Commander COVID.
Okay, Massachusetts numbers yesterday. Total cases 157,308. New cases was 923. Total deaths is 9,809. New deaths was 12. Bristol County had 13,010. Fall River had 35 new cases, bringing us up to 2,824. We had 3 new deaths, bringing us up to 140. So those are our numbers. And now on to the big stuff. That's for sure. So I was up all night watching the returns on this election, and there's really nothing there. We got so many states that can't be called yet. But they're all focusing on Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania has 3 days. They have until Friday to have all their votes counted. Because the court ruled that once the ballot has been postmarked for the 3rd, it's eligible to be counted. Now in Massachusetts, they don't do that. It's got to be in the polling place by 8 o'clock before they close. But Pennsylvania's special.
Yeah, it's so special that the Attorney General actually predicted a Biden victory before the election.
Right.
So it's pretty apparent we're going back to the days of Mayor Daley in Chicago, where everybody in the cemetery voted in the election, and he always got in. So obviously, this is outrageous. The states have autonomy, but they're using it for political purposes, not for fairness to the voters. Because, listen, we've been doing this for hundreds of years. We have absentee ballots. We have a mechanism to get the ballots in. Election day is election day, and that's my opinion. And you shouldn't be bending over backwards to do and ultimately, it's pretty apparent that they're going to be the Democratic legislature, the Democratic courts have bent over backwards to tilt the playing field for Biden. So I guess it's going to court. Trump said it's they're gonna be looking to go to court after they get the final result, but they still may win Pennsylvania outright, and we don't know. But this election's been a horror show. I mean, this country is totally divided, and it showed it. All those people. And remember, the Democrats, they're out there rioting now, but they should be eating their own, because the fact is that they spent over $1 billion trying to get rid of people in the Senate, and they really didn't do that well. So this election shows that this country is basically really divided, and I don't see any hope of it ever healing again, because they're already rioting in the streets. And I'm looking at my phone. They actually elected a BLM activist to Congress. So in Missouri. And I mean, look, I'm sorry. If somebody that purports the murdering of police and who says basically that the only lives that matter are black lives, that's racist. I think all lives matter. And I think if you can't say that, if you can't articulate those words that all lives matter, you shouldn't be in Congress because you're a racist. You may be a reverse racist or whatever, but it's ironic that the only people that can be racist are people who are white. And that other commercial that all lives matter only when black lives matter, that's a contradiction. Just think about that statement. All the other lives is secondary. What they've done is relegate all other people except black lives to being subhuman. So they only matter after what you should do is say inclusively, all lives matter. Black lives matter, yellow lives matter, Martian lives matter, all lives matter. This country is, they've been listening to these media hacks distort the news. And, I find it amazing that this election is even this close. But we're going to see this election is not going to be settled, I think, for a very long time. And it's going to become very, very acrimonious, I think. And I'm looking at Arizona. They called Arizona way too early. And Arizona's got 11 electoral votes. Exactly. You think about that. They called Arizona, and there's only a couple thousand votes difference. And there's only 75% of the vote in, which means 25% of the vote isn't in. And they called that state. And think about it. I think the last time I looked, Biden had 238, Trump had 213. So if you take those 11 votes from Biden, he goes down to 227. You add those to Trump, and he's up to 224. So if you look at that, if Trump actually wins Arizona, there's a 3-vote difference in the Electoral College right now without the swing states. So this is a 3-ring circus. This is like a banana republic now. We've got people rioting because they didn't get their way. So, people, you spent $1 billion to take over the Senate in elections. And when you can't do it, you're going to riot because you just want it. It's the way you want it, or you're going to stamp your feet and destroy the nation, which is, remember the good old days when people used to say, okay, we fought the fight. We fought as hard as we could. We lost the election. Now we all have to unite for the greater good of whether it be a union or a country or a union of states. Because I went to many conventions where there were tremendously bitter fights for certain offices. But at the end, the loser would normally get up to a mic and say, I want to cast all my votes for the victor. So we are all united. Well, let's make this unanimous as we proceed together. But that doesn't happen anymore.
Well, when I ran for office, I did something that everyone kind of thought I was crazy for. When I lost the election, I went to my opponent's campaign party, shook his hand and said, congratulations, with no ill feelings, nothing, because, it was a race and that was the way it was. But, some of the people that were at that party still had nothing good to say, because people are people. People are just people, and it's that simple. You try to bring the people back together, and there's just people that just won't have it done. They just don't want it.
You're right, CJ, and I think it's the unfortunate result of the affluence of the United States. We've gotten too rich, too complacent. Our forefathers, when they came to this country, was scratching. They were trying to survive. They were dying in the cold winters in Plymouth, and they had to figure out how to grow crops. They had to do things that they were not used to from their country of origin, and to just barely survive in a nation. And then they were all united in creating a nation where they could worship freely, have some freedoms. And then it evolved to the point where we broke with England and created this great nation. And it was, everybody was united in the fact that we were all Americans. As Theodore Roosevelt said in his now famous speech, there's no such thing as a hyphenated American. We're all Americans. And as you said, after elections, there's always going to be a couple of boneheads that are going to hold a grudge. But most of the people in the United States would say, okay, we fought the fight. We're not happy about it, but America comes first, not our agenda. But now we've devolved into a society where America doesn't count, the flag doesn't count, the sacrifices of all the people who died to maintain our liberty doesn't count. The only thing that counts is their agenda. If they don't get their way, we're going to burn things down, or we're going to riot. First, we'll try to win it at the polls. And if we don't win it at the polls, then we'll burn the country down. Because if it's not our way, we don't want this country to be a United States. People forget that. We are not one country. We are one country from one perspective, but we are a union of states. And each state, that's the reason that states have so much power. When we created this country, we realized that we had to maintain the state's power, because we were not, this is not like Germany where everybody in Germany's a German. You know, these states were basically their own little nations until they began to unite. And in order to unite, you have to accept the fact that we have to proceed together, because if we divide like we are now, we're not going to accomplish anything. Regardless of who wins this election, I'm not really optimistic about us being able to move past this stuff. They've allowed Antifa and BLM to get way too out of control. They'll never be able to rein them in. I don't care who's the president. And the reality is that, you know, we fundamentally going to have the same thing, except for the president. Looks like the Republicans are going to maintain the Senate, although the Republicans did pick up 15 seats in the House.
Yeah,
they picked up some seats in the House, but they still don't have anywhere near the majority. So the Democrats will still have the majority. So the president will be different. So maybe or maybe not. But you know, the thing is, when you look at the landscape of what's happening and then looking at what the fallout is, I mean, the chances of us reuniting as a nation to move the nation forward, and then in 4 years, if you don't like the direction it's being taken, you'll have another chance. I don't believe it's going to happen. I think we're closer to a civil war than we are to civility.
Yeah. I hear you. You know, something that I think the Trump campaign should have used was the fact that Martin Luther King Jr.'s family came out and actually said, Martin Luther King Jr. says Trump presidency is an opportunity for the U.S. to correct itself. Alvedia King came out and said that she voted for Donald Trump. The King family did this. Now, how do you think all those people in Black Lives Matter would feel if they heard this stuff? If they read this stuff? I found it this morning on Fox News when she said that she's praying that they settle this matter with the presidency and give Donald Trump the presidency. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, that would have spoken volumes to members of the Black community, I think. But then again, maybe not.
Well, no, I think it does, because you see an uptick in the Black support in many areas, but it's not, BLM is not a Black movement. It's run by rich white people. They may use some Black people to be on the front lines to give it an impression, but this is a radical movement for Marxism and totalitarianism. It's got nothing to do with forwarding the Black agenda. And I think also she also mentioned that while she was in the line, she heard one voter ask somebody, "Do I have to sign anything?" which implied she was basically implying there may have been voter fraud.
Correct.
So she also said that, and this is the problem we have. And as you said, you looked at her saying we've got a chance, but I go back to always to one of the most radical of black militants, Malcolm X. And Malcolm X, when he saw the light, when he went on a pilgrimage to Mecca and saw blonde-haired, blue-eyed Muslims, and then he realized that it wasn't the color of the skin, but who the person was as a human being. And he came back, and that's when they assassinated him, because he didn't go with the Black Muslim movement. He began to separate himself after that, because he wasn't just anti-white for the sake of they were white, but he made that statement that I always use that quote. He said, and it's true, he said, "I'm for justice, no matter who it's for. And I'm for the truth, no matter who tells it." And that is one of the greatest statements I've ever heard, because if it's justice, it should be justice. When you go to a courtroom, the lady of justice is blindfolded, because it's supposed to be colorblind. And these movements are racist. To single out any group and exclude everybody else is racist. But it's ironic that racism is only looked upon from one side. It's not racist for somebody to basically eliminate all other lives except theirs. So, I mean, and it's not. It's endemic to the entire human race. And ironically, do you know what race is the most racist?
Not a clue.
The yellow race, the Orientals. I've seen it firsthand. Right. Think about this. Not too many people think about this, but this is how weird I am. I think about stuff because I'm a big man I'm big about semantics and words. We have a word that excludes everybody but us in any white culture or any black culture? I don't think so.
No.
But yet, if you look at the Orientals, the Chinese have a word, guaylo, which means anybody else but somebody that's Chinese. And the Japanese have fundamentally the same word, gaijing, which excludes the rest of the world except them. So they have a fundamentally racist word in their vocabularies, and they use it regularly to refer to anybody that's not one of their race. Now, you could turn around and say, well, there's nothing wrong with that, because there was a sociological concept. There is one, which is being ignored now, which is called ethnocentrism, which means that people tend to gravitate toward people who are like them. And I think that is a sociological trait. But think about it. All they ever talk about is racism, yet they're being racist. Just look at everybody as a human being, and you've solved the problem. But no, this country is getting more and more racist by the day. More and more racist by the day.
And I firmly believe that we have people that are causing it to become worse. And when you start dividing the country the way that some organizations have been doing this, it's just sad, and it just makes it worse. That's for sure.
And everything's in the perspective, because some people look at, but it is divisive. I won't say divisive, because I'm not a yuppie. The yuppies say homage. They drop the H like they're speaking French, and rather than divisive. So I say divide, and so divisive is not really. But if you look at the way they begin, everybody is labeled in this culture today. The United States, which is supposed to be a melting pot, and everybody's just supposed to be an American, and just a human being and an American, everybody has to have a label. You use the wrong pronoun, you're in trouble. If you don't support this, you should be shot in the face. And this is intentional. There is a concentrated effort to divide this country so certain people can take power. And we're in for a rocky road the next 4 years, regardless of what happens, because as I said, I don't see these sides coming together, because one side is for law and order and the other side is for anarchy and chaos, and the twain will never meet between those two. And it's a tragedy to see this, because look, you run an election like you did, you walk up there like a man, you shake the guy's hand, say, I wish you a lot of luck, and if you need any help, if you're doing something good, I'll support it. And that's fundamentally what everyone should do. You fight for what you believe in, but then if you fight and you lose the fight, you try to help move forward. But when you lose to a group that is fostering hate, murder, destruction of property, and the virtual elimination, sometimes even by murder, but by taking people's jobs away from their livelihood, of anybody who has a different opinion, we've turned the United States into a banana republic. This is like Somalia.
I hear you.
And that's the problem. I mean, it's painful to watch. And the only good thing is that I think maybe we've eliminated these pollsters. Maybe by the next election, after these last two, when they predicted blowouts in both elections, they were 100% wrong again. They didn't learn anything from 16. There are a bunch of, their polling methods are just archaic, and they should just be not even talked about in 24.
Well, the interesting thing was last night, all the major news outlets all said the same thing. What happened to the pollsters again? Is it time that we do away with pollsters? I mean, truly, the poll numbers just aren't there. They were saying that they were in states that Trump took, and they said that they were doing exit polling, and it was showing that it was all Biden, and they were calling those states for Biden, and then all of a sudden, they had to call it for Trump. So here we go again. This is, 2016 all over. The pollsters don't have it right. Even some of the biggest pollsters don't have it right. So you have to be careful on what you're going to put your faith in. And the problem we have here in Massachusetts, they didn't even wait for the numbers to come in Massachusetts. They had already given Biden Massachusetts. They didn't even wait for the numbers to come in for Markey. They gave the seat to Markey. They don't wait, because Massachusetts is too freaking stupid, and they always vote the party line. No matter what, they vote the party line. And as long as you do that, you will be, you're going to be a weak state to deal with. That's why we don't get presidential visits. That's why we're not at the top of the list for anything that the president may want to do. We're last because no matter which president it is, because we're called before the votes even come in. And that's the sad part about it. The people need to stop learning not to vote with your heart or vote with, feelings and emotions. You got to vote with your head. I mean, I personally did not like Markey. I still don't like Markey. And Kevin O'Connor, I think, had some good points to make. But because he was a Republican, people raised their nose in the air and ignored him, just like they do to every other Republican candidate in this state. We are too liberal and too Democratic controlled. And I know that I've got a friend out there who's, very active in the Democratic Party, and we don't see this eye to eye on this, but we're civil. We're civil about it, and that's important. And a lot of people aren't civil, and we need to remain civil.
Well, CJ, you're right, but you can't argue with the fact, because all you got to do is look at Massachusetts' voting record.
Right.
I mean, as you said, politicians don't even stop by here unless they're running for state office or local office, because presidential candidates don't care. They say those pinheads, they're in the tank, they're in the bag. Nobody cares. And let's look how now you look at this state and all the taxes and the way they spend money. Then you go out into the Midwest and you look at some of these red states like Wyoming and Montana and no, very low taxes, pretty safe states to live in. You don't have people running up and down the streets, burning things down. And you wonder why people don't consider maybe trying something new and listening to other ideas. As you said, they're brainwashed. And the media has a lot to do with that, because, they turn on the mainstream media, and any similarity for what they're preaching is purely coincidental, because, they're condemning the polls now, but I'll tell you what, they hammered those polls all the way up through the election cycle to try to convince people that voting for anybody else. And as you said, the exit polls in some states that Trump won, the exit polls said Biden was going to win. Well, why? That's the reason polls are no good. They lie. People lie. You get them on the phone. If they do answer, they're going to go, this might be somebody from BLM or Antifa. You come out in an exit poll, you go, if somebody sees me saying I voted for Trump, they might be burning my car in the parking lot. So people don't tell the truth. It's a secret ballot. A few of us do. Like I said, you could follow me into the booth with a camera. I don't care. I'm going to vote for who I want to vote for, and I'm going to vote for the person I feel is the best candidate, period. And it doesn't matter whether I like them or dislike them. I don't hire a mechanic or a contractor to work on my house because I like him. I hire him because he's good at what he does, and I pay him. And then if I decide to have a beer with him when he's done will depend on whether I like him or not. But if I don't like him, I'll pay him the money, thank him for doing a good job, and see you later. But that's the problem with politics, CJ. You know that. I don't have to tell you that. Being a politician, a professional politician, is the only job you need absolutely no qualifications except a giant line of BS and the ability to smile at everybody, no matter how much you dislike them.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, you can know nothing about anything, and you're going to get elected. I mean, look, AOC's become a national power. She was slinging drinks 3 years ago. She was a bartender.
Right.
And she's made some statements in humanity. And I'm not only restricting it to the Democrats. I mean, look at Sarah Palin was no rocket scientist either.
But she was the governor of Alaska.
But she was the governor of Alaska, but she could see Russia from there.
That's right. I can see Russia from my kitchen.
Russia from my house. Yeah. Okay. And, but listen, this is the problem with the country. The people do not vote on merit. It's all about marketing. They market politicians. They brainwash you.
Yeah, I hear you.
What do you get? You get nothing but BS.
That's it. And that's why we're in the situation we're in. Well, we're out of time. I want to thank you all for inviting us into your home. And remember, we're going to have to wait until Friday. So maybe Friday we'll know who the president is. Stay safe and stay angry. Have a great day now.
See you in court.